Meet the Shiesty family, the gangsters who raised a rap star. Before the fame, before the charts, and before the prison sentence, there was a family name that already carried fear and respect in South Memphis. This is not just the story of a rapper. It's the story of how crime, loyalty, and survival shaped a rising star long before the spotlight arrived. At Legends of Black Excellence, we go beyond headlines to examine the truth behind the legacy. Watch closely, because every choice has consequences, and every legacy has a price. Stay with us until the end and ask yourself, was this destiny or a chance to break the cycle? Born into blood, the Shiesty family legacy. The story of the Williams family, often referred to as the Shiesty family, begins long before rap success entered the picture. Pooh Shiesty, born Lantrell Williams Jr. in 1999, did not grow up chasing music dreams in isolation. His early life unfolded in South Memphis, a neighborhood shaped by economic hardship, persistent crime, and generational cycles of survival. Even before he was known by millions, his last name carried meaning on the streets. In this world, reputation mattered as much as money, and family history could define a child's future before they ever made their own choices. South Memphis has long been associated with gang culture, drug trafficking, and violent competition, not as mythology, but as documented reality. Its location near major highways, especially the Interstate 55 corridor, a key north-south route, made it strategically important for illicit trade moving between the Midwest and the Deep South. For many families, legal opportunity was scarce, while underground economies offered faster, riskier paths to income and influence. Growing up here meant learning early how power worked, who controlled territory, and why silence and loyalty were often necessary for survival. At the center of the Williams household was Lantrell Williams Sr., known as Mob Boss. He was widely recognized in Memphis as someone who blended street authority with business ambition. Mob Boss operated Mob Ties Records, presenting a legitimate music front while maintaining deep connections to the street economy. His name became nationally known following his conviction as an accessory after the fact in a 2015 murder case involving radio DJ Rebecca Glenn, a turning point that brought law enforcement scrutiny and eventual imprisonment. Yet even behind bars, his influence lingered, shaping how the family was viewed and treated within the community. Holding the household together was Pooh Shiesty's mother, often called Ma Boss, a figure rarely seen publicly but central to the family's survival. With her husband incarcerated, she managed the home under constant pressure, balancing protection, discipline, and emotional control in an unforgiving environment. Meanwhile, the broader Memphis rap scene, dominated by figures like Yo Gotti, who represented the city's path from streets to mainstream success, formed the cultural backdrop. That contrast mattered. It showed young artists like Pooh Shiesty that music could be an exit even if the streets were the foundation. From this intersection of crime, culture, and ambition, a rap star was quietly being shaped. Mob Boss from kingpin to prison cell. In Memphis, the line between music and the streets has often been thin, and Mob Boss Lantrell Williams Sr. understood that reality better than most. To the public, Mob Ties Records appeared to be a modest, independent label tied to the city's rising rap scene. Behind the scenes, however, federal investigators later described it as a convenient front one that provided legitimacy, access, and cover for a lifestyle funded largely by the underground economy. This dual existence allowed Mob Boss to move comfortably between recording studios and street operations, reinforcing his reputation as both a businessman and a power broker. That reputation came crashing down in 2015 with the murder of Rebecca Glenn, a well-known Memphis radio DJ and former host at WHBQ. Glenn was found shot to death outside her home, a crime that shocked the local music community. The case took a darker turn when investigators connected Mob Boss to the aftermath of the killing. Although he was not accused of pulling the trigger, prosecutors later argued that he helped Stanley Andrews, the man convicted of the murder, evade police in the critical hours following the crime. This distinction between the act itself and assistance after the fact became central to the case. Court records revealed that after the shooting, Andrews was allegedly aided by individuals within mob boss's circle, including Marquita Thomas, who was accused of helping him hide. Police testimony, including statements from Detective Robinson of the Memphis Police Department, detailed how investigators traced movement's phone records and witness accounts back to mob boss. The case highlighted how street loyalty often extended beyond crime into deliberate obstruction, reinforcing the idea that mob boss's power came not just from money, but from the silence and cooperation of those around him. The investigation widened further with a raid on a trap house on Porter Street, a location prosecutors described as a hub for drug distribution. During the search, police reportedly recovered large sums of cash firearms, illegal narcotics, and multiple pit bulls, a common feature of fortified drug houses used for intimidation and protection. These findings strengthened the government's narrative. Mob Boss was not simply a music executive who made bad decisions, but a central figure in a broader criminal network. His eventual conviction and prison sentence dismantled the structure he had built, yet its impact lingered. For the Shiesty family, Mob Boss's fall was not just a legal outcome, it was a defining moment that exposed how closely music, money, and violence had been intertwined from the very beginning. The woman holding the empire together. When Mob Boss was sent to prison, many expected the Williams household to collapse under pressure. Instead, the family adapted, and much of that resilience can be traced back to Pooh Shiesty's mother, often referred to as Ma Boss. Unlike her husband, she avoided public attention and media headlines, but her role was no less powerful. With law enforcement watching closely and street expectations still looming, she became the central force maintaining order, stability, and survival within the family. In a world where absence often leads to chaos, Ma Boss filled the void with discipline and control. Raising children in South Memphis during this period meant confronting harsh realities early. Pooh Shiesty's childhood was shaped by instability, frequent police presence, and the knowledge that his family name carried weight, both protective and dangerous. Ma Boss understood that sheltering her son from this reality was impossible. Instead, she focused on preparation. She taught him how to read people, when to speak, and when to stay silent, and how to move carefully in environments where mistakes could be permanent. Survival, in her view, was not about fear, but awareness. One of the core principles Ma Boss instilled was loyalty to family first above all else. In the Williams household, loyalty was not a slogan. It was a rule enforced through behavior and consequence. Pooh Shiesty learned early that disloyalty could fracture families and invite danger. At the same time, Ma Boss emphasized emotional control. Showing weakness, especially in public, could invite exploitation. This mindset did not eliminate vulnerability, but it taught Pooh Shiesty to guard it closely, shaping the hardened exterior that would later define his public persona. Equally important was the idea of protecting the family's name. With Mob Boss incarcerated, reputation became both shield and target. Any misstep by the children could reflect back on the entire household. Ma Boss reinforced the importance of respect, earning it, maintaining it, and defending it when challenged. These lessons were not theoretical. They were reinforced daily through observation and experience. As Pooh Shiesty grew older, these values naturally carried over into his music, where loyalty, toughness, and respect became recurring themes. Ma Boss rarely receives public credit, yet her influence is undeniable. She did not glamorize the streets, nor did she pretend they did not exist. Instead, she taught her son how to endure them. In many ways, Pooh Shiesty's survival long before fame was a direct result of the disciplined mindset and emotional armor his mother built around him. Behind the headlines and the music, her role stands as proof that sometimes the most powerful figures operate quietly, shaping destinies from the shadows. A brother's death changed everything. For Pooh Shiesty, few relationships mattered more than the bond with his older brother, known as TP, also referred to as Ta or TWP. Within the Williams family and their South Memphis community, TP was seen as a steady presence, someone who understood the streets but carried himself with a sense of responsibility. To a younger Pooh Shiesty, TP represented guidance and protection, the kind of older sibling who showed how to move carefully, earn respect, and survive without unnecessary attention. Long before music or fame, TP was the standard Pooh Shiesty quietly measured himself against. That sense of stability was shattered when TP was diagnosed with brain cancer. The illness was not a rumor or a metaphor. It was a documented medical battle that lasted months and drained both emotional and financial resources from the family. As TP's health declined, the household shifted into survival mode, balancing hospital visits with the realities of street life. In January 2021, TP passed away, a loss that struck at a critical moment. Pooh Shiesty's career was rapidly rising, but privately he was grieving the one person who had anchored him emotionally in a chaotic world. The aftermath of TP's death revealed how unforgiving the street environment could be. Instead of silence or respect, rival circles allegedly mocked the loss, turning grief into provocation. EBG Jizzle, already associated with an ongoing feud involving Choppa Gang, became linked to diss records and online taunts referencing TP's death. While diss culture has long been part of hip-hop, this situation went beyond lyrics. For Pooh Shiesty, the insults were personal reopening wounds and reinforcing the belief that vulnerability invited attack. The result was not public mourning, but emotional hardening. This period marked a clear transformation. Observers noted a colder tone in Pooh Shiesty's demeanor and music reflecting anger layered over discipline. TP's death did not create the street mindset he had grown up inside it, but it intensified it. Loss turned into motivation, and grief became fuel for loyalty and retaliation narratives in his work. While none of this erased the pain, it reshaped how Pooh Shiesty approached both conflict and success. TP remained present not as a voice, but as a memory that influenced every decision. The death of his brother was not just a family tragedy. It was a psychological turning point. It reinforced the lessons Pooh Shiesty had learned since childhood, that respect must be defended, and that the streets show no mercy for weakness. In honoring TP's memory, Pooh Shiesty carried forward not only his brother's influence, but also the emotional weight that would follow him into the next chapter of his life. Choppa Gang built on violence. By the time Pooh Shiesty reached his early teens, violence was no longer something he merely witnessed. It was something that surrounded him daily. Growing up in South Memphis meant exposure to conflict at an age when most children were still shielded from it. According to court records and local reporting referenced in later years, Pooh Shiesty had early encounters with the juvenile justice system, with issues beginning as young as 11 years old. These were not isolated incidents, but signs of a childhood shaped by instability, street pressure, and a constant need to defend oneself. Accounts from those familiar with the neighborhood describe an environment where children matured quickly out of necessity. Schools were not always places of safety, and rumors circulated that young teens carried weapons for protection rather than intimidation. Reports that Pooh Shiesty brought a firearm to school, while never glamorized, illustrated how normalized danger had become. Whether for fear, reputation, or survival, the line between childhood and adulthood blurred early. These experiences hardened his mindset and reinforced lessons learned at home. Stay alert, trust few people, and never appear vulnerable. As adolescence turned into late teenage years, those pressures evolved into organization. Choppa Gang was formed not as a formal gang with public leadership, but as a tight-knit group built on shared history, loyalty, and mutual protection. Big 30. A close associate and eventual rap collaborator, became one of its most visible members. Together with other young men from the same area, they developed a reputation that spread quickly across South Memphis. Their bond was forged less through music at first and more through shared risk and street credibility. Law enforcement narratives later alleged that members of Choppa Gang were involved in robberies targeting drug dealers. a crime category often viewed within street culture as less likely to involve police cooperation. These actions, while illegal and dangerous, reportedly elevated their status in the neighborhood. For Pooh Shiesty, this period was about building a name before he ever stepped into a recording booth. Reputation functioned as currency, offering protection, respect, and influence. Yet it also drew attention from rivals and authorities alike. This chapter of Pooh Shiesty's life is not a celebration of violence, but a reflection of cause and effect. A childhood shaped by fear and instability produced a young man who sought control through unity and reputation. Choppa Gang emerged as both shield and identity, giving its members a sense of belonging in an unforgiving environment. Long before fame arrived, the groundwork had already been laid through choices made under pressure, lessons learned too early, and a street legacy that would later follow Pooh Shiesty into the spotlight. When rap beef turned into real war, the conflict between Choppa Gang and EBG. Everybody Gang did not begin as entertainment or marketing. It emerged from real street tension in South Memphis. At the center was Pooh Shiesty, alongside close associate Big 30, whose growing visibility brought old neighborhood rivalries into sharper focus. According to widely reported street narratives later referenced in music, members aligned with Choppa Gang were accused of robbing individuals connected to EBG, an act that carried serious consequences in an environment where retaliation was expected. What followed was not just disagreement, but escalation. As the conflict moved into music, diss records became weapons rather than publicity tools. Lyrics referenced real incidents, real losses, and real threats. EBG Jizzle, a prominent member of EBG, responded publicly, fueling a cycle where disrespect demanded response. In Memphis, where reputation is deeply tied to survival, ignoring provocation can be interpreted as weakness. This dynamic pushed the feud beyond words, blurring the line between expression and confrontation. What outsiders might label rap beef was for those involved an extension of existing street warfare. The release of Back in Blood marked a turning point. While the song became a commercial success, its message was rooted in authenticity rather than exaggeration. Pooh Shiesty and Big 30 did not frame the track as metaphor or fiction. Instead, it reflected lived experience referencing betrayal, retaliation, and loyalty. This honesty resonated with listeners, but also intensified tensions on the ground. In this context, the phrase "back in blood" was understood not as a catchy hook, but as a statement of how conflicts were resolved in their world. The violence soon became undeniable. EBG Jizzle was shot, an incident that underscored how quickly lyrical conflict could spill into real harm. While details surrounding the shooting were never fully resolved in public records, the message was clear: the feud had crossed a point of no return. For Pooh Shiesty, the event reinforced the reality he had known since childhood, that visibility brings vulnerability, and that success does not shield anyone from consequences tied to the past. This chapter of the Shiesty story illustrates a harsh truth about street-centered rap narratives. When music reflects real conflict, it can amplify danger rather than contain it. The EBG Choppa Gang feud was not created for clout, nor did it stay confined to studios or social media. It unfolded in neighborhoods, affected real people, and left lasting damage. For an audience looking beyond headlines, this moment explains why Pooh Shiesty's rise felt both powerful and precarious, because in his world, rap was never just music. Disrespect that got people killed. In Memphis rap culture, respect is currency, and words carry weight far beyond interviews or social media clips. The tension involving Big Boogie and Pooh Shiesty began not with violence, but with perceived disrespect. Comments interpreted as dismissive toward Pooh Shiesty circulated publicly, fueling speculation and resentment within overlapping circles. In a city where reputation is closely tied to personal safety, even indirect slights can escalate quickly. What might have sounded like casual bravado to outsiders was understood locally as a challenge to standing and credibility. The situation intensified through symbolism and branding. Big Boogie's association with a marijuana brand called Red Rum, a name widely recognized as slang for murder spelled backward, became part of the narrative surrounding the conflict. While branding alone does not equal intent in an already volatile environment, it added fuel to the fire. For those watching closely, it reinforced how street imagery, music, and identity often blend in ways that blur responsibility. The tension was no longer abstract. It was being amplified by public perception and street interpretation. Tragically, the conflict reached a breaking point in Mississippi during a concert appearance connected to Big Boogie. Gunfire erupted outside the venue, turning a music event into a crime scene. Jasmine Bradshaw and Elvie Wilborn were killed, and several others were injured, marking one of the most devastating outcomes tied to this broader atmosphere of hostility. While investigations focused on identifying shooters and circumstances, the loss itself reshaped the conversation. What began as verbal disrespect and image-driven rivalry had culminated in irreversible consequences. For Pooh Shiesty, the incident served as a stark reminder of how quickly proximity to conflict can become fatal even without direct involvement. The tragedy reinforced a lesson he had learned repeatedly in street-adjacent rap culture: chaos does not always target its intended subjects. Innocent lives are often the ones most affected. For the broader audience, especially older observers familiar with the long history of violence intersecting with music, the Mississippi shooting echoed a painful pattern seen before. This chapter is not about assigning blame where courts and investigators must speak, but about understanding escalation. Disrespect when layered with public platforms. Street symbolism and unresolved rivalries can spiral beyond control. The deaths of Jasmine Bradshaw and Elvie Wilborn underscored a reality many choose to ignore: that words can open doors, violence walks through. In the story of Pooh Shiesty and those around him, this moment stands as one of the clearest examples of how fragile the boundary is between performance and tragedy. From street hustler to rap superstar, Pooh Shiesty's transition from the streets of South Memphis to national recognition did not happen overnight. His musical debut came after years of building a reputation that felt authentic to listeners who understood his background. Early releases circulated locally before gaining wider traction, with his raw delivery and uncompromising tone setting him apart. Unlike artists who relied on polished imagery, Pooh Shiesty entered the rap scene carrying the weight of lived experience. That credibility, shaped long before he entered a studio, became the foundation of his early momentum. A key figure during this rise was Big 30, both a close associate and musical partner. Their collaboration reflected shared history rather than industry pairing, making their chemistry believable to audiences. The Project Hell Night helped establish Pooh Shiesty as more than a regional name, signaling that his sound could travel beyond Memphis. The real breakthrough, however, came with Back in Blood, a collaboration with Lil Durk released in 2020. The track resonated nationally, peaking at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100, and introduced Pooh Shiesty to a mainstream audience without softening his image. Industry attention followed quickly. Gucci Mane himself, a figure who had navigated the intersection of street credibility and commercial success, recognized Pooh Shiesty's potential. In 2020, Pooh Shiesty signed with 1017 Records, Gucci Mane's label, in partnership with Atlantic Records. The deal marked a turning point, providing access to major label distribution while allowing him to maintain creative control over his narrative. Gucci Mane's mentorship offered more than business guidance. It symbolized legitimacy within a lineage of Southern rap, shaped by survival and reinvention. As success brought financial stability, Pooh Shiesty made choices that reflected long-held priorities. One of the most significant was purchasing a home for his family, a milestone frequently referenced in interviews and lyrics. For someone raised amid instability and incarceration, ownership represented more than wealth. It was security and responsibility. This moment highlighted the contrast between where he came from and where music had taken him. Yet even at his peak, the past was never distant. This chapter of Shiesty's story illustrates how opportunity can emerge from unlikely places, but also how closely success remains tied to origin. His rise from street life to rap stardom was built on authenticity, strategic partnerships, and undeniable talent. With Big 30 beside him, Lil Durk amplifying his reach, and Gucci Mane guiding his path, Shiesty's ascent felt earned. It was the moment when survival turned into success, at least on the surface, setting the stage for what would come next. Fame, money, and a fatal mistake. At the height of his rising fame, Shiesty found himself standing at a dangerous crossroads. Commercial success had arrived quickly, bringing money recognition and expanded access, but also heightened scrutiny. In October 2020, while his music was climbing charts, he became involved in a robbery in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida, an incident that would later become central to his legal downfall. According to federal prosecutors, the crime targeted individuals believed to be connected to street-level dealing, reflecting patterns rooted in his past rather than the life his career now afforded him. Court documents described how the robbery escalated into violence. During the incident, a victim was shot and chaos followed as money reportedly spilled onto the ground. Surveillance footage and witness accounts later played a critical role in reconstructing the sequence of events. Investigators alleged that Shiesty was present and directly involved, a claim that sharply contrasted with his public image as a rising rap star. What made the situation particularly damaging was not only the alleged act itself, but how easily it was traced in an era dominated by digital evidence. The case deepened months later with a separate shooting at the King of Diamonds nightclub in Miami, a well-known venue frequented by celebrities. In May 2021, a security guard was shot during an altercation, and shell casings were recovered at the scene. Although Shiesty was not charged with pulling the trigger in that case, prosecutors argued that his actions contributed to a violent chain of events. The incident reinforced the perception that he remained entangled in high-risk behavior even as his career demanded discipline and distance from the streets. Perhaps most damaging was the role of social media evidence. Photos and videos allegedly posted online showed large amounts of cash matching money reported stolen during the Florida robbery. In modern federal prosecutions, digital footprints often speak louder than witnesses, and this case was no exception. Bradford Cohen, a high-profile criminal defense attorney representing Shiesty, publicly acknowledged the strength of the government's evidence. Ultimately, these factors contributed to a federal guilty plea and a 63-month prison sentence handed down in 2022. This chapter of Shiesty's story illustrates how quickly ambition can collide with consequence. The money he once chased was now within reach, yet decisions rooted in old survival instincts proved costly. For many observers, especially those familiar with past generations of artists, the pattern felt tragically familiar. Success alone does not erase conditioning. In Shiesty's case, the same authenticity that fueled his rise also pulled him back toward choices that would temporarily take everything away. Prison legacy and an uncertain future. In 2022, the trajectory of Shiesty's career was abruptly interrupted when he was sentenced to 63 months in federal prison for his role in the Florida robbery case. The ruling marked a decisive moment, transforming a fast-rising rap star into a cautionary example of how quickly success can unravel. For the courts, the sentence reflected the seriousness of the offense and the weight of evidence presented. For Shiesty, it signaled a forced pause, one that stripped away momentum and replaced it with time isolation and reflection. Beyond incarceration, the consequences extended further. Shiesty was also ordered to serve a period of strict supervised release following his prison term. These conditions include close monitoring, limited travel, and zero tolerance for violations rules designed to prevent a return to the lifestyle that led him there. In federal cases, supervision is often as challenging as prison itself, requiring discipline and separation from familiar environments. For someone whose identity was shaped by South Memphis streets, compliance represents a fundamental test of growth. The sentence also reopened old family wounds. Mob boss Pooh Shiesty's father had previously walked a similar path: street power followed by federal incarceration. That parallel was impossible to ignore. Within the Williams family, the question became generational. Was this simply history repeating itself, or could this moment mark a break in the cycle? Loved ones expressed quiet hope that the lessons learned behind bars might succeed where warnings once failed. The family had endured prison before. Enduring it again forced deeper reflection. From the outside industry, support remained cautious but present. Gucci Mane, who had signed Pooh Shiesty to 1017 Records before his arrest, continued to be referenced as a symbol of second chances, someone who had served time and returned with focus and longevity. Though not directly involved in legal matters, his example loomed large. It suggested that prison did not have to be an ending, but a crossroads. As Pooh Shiesty serves his sentence, the future remains unwritten. Talent alone will not determine what comes next. The real challenge lies in whether he can unlearn the instincts that once ensured survival, but later fueled downfall. Breaking the family cycle means redefining loyalty, success, and identity outside the streets. For audiences watching from a distance, especially those who have seen similar stories unfold, the outcome is uncertain. The question remains simple but profound. Will this chapter become a turning point or just another verse in a familiar family story? At Legends of Black Excellence, the story of Pooh Shiesty leaves us with an uncomfortable but necessary question. When talent rises from environments shaped by crime, loyalty, and survival, how much responsibility belongs to the individual and how much to the system that raised them? Pooh Shiesty followed a path he knew long before fame found him, echoing choices made by those before him. But history also shows that cycles can be broken. Prison has ended many stories, yet it has also reshaped others. Is this chapter a warning, a wake-up call, or simply another verse in a repeating legacy? The answer is still being written, and it deserves honest debate.